The first thing I noticed was that it wasn't the CEO sitting across from me. It was an intern. She looked about 21, maybe 22. Freshly ironed blouse, still creased from the packaging. Her hands were shaking slightly as she unfolded a printed statement, double-spaced, size 14 font. No eye contact, just nerves. Leadership decided it's time for fresh energy. She winced before she even finished the sentence, like she expected me to explode. I didn't. I just smiled. The kind of tight practice smile you wear when your stomach drops, but you won't let them see it. 3 minutes ago, I still had a title, an office, and a team that reported to me. Now, I'm just Michael Crane. And honestly, that's an upgrade. For the last 12 years, I ran global systems integration at Corvex Solutions, a multinational tech conglomerate allergic to accountability, but obsessed with buzzwords. Reinventing the future, they said. 12 years. That's how long I poured my life into this place. I built the division from a skeleton crew and a borrowed conference room into a full-scale operation spanning 4 continents. I moved fast, too fast maybe. Director by 30, and I never looked back. We reduced latency across every system line by 38%. We slashed vendor costs by over $3 million a year. I even negotiated our first EU compliance framework before the board knew it existed. I trained the teams, wrote the documentation, led every overhaul and pivot. There's not a system in this company that doesn't have my fingerprints somewhere in its code or architecture, but none of that was in her script. She looked up at me finally, clearly unsure whether to keep going or just bolt. The silence was heavy, but I let it sit. I wanted her to feel it. They didn't even have the decency to do it themselves. Not the CEO, not HR's head of operations, not even my own department lead. Just this poor girl with shaking fingers and a script she probably printed 10 minutes ago. The signs were there, of course. I'd be a fool to pretend otherwise. It started with the meetings I stopped getting invited to. Quarterly strategy sessions that used to require my input suddenly didn't require my bandwidth. The updates went silent. Conversations became vague. Performance reviews shifted from praise to, "We'd like to see you take a step back and empower others." That was code. I knew it even then. And then there was the nephew, Bradley. MBA from a school with more donors than rigor. Loud, polished, cocky in that performative way some young men are when they've never had to earn the room. He showed up 6 months ago, supposedly shadowing for exposure. They paired him with me. I taught him everything. Not because I liked him, because I take pride in what I build. I walked him through every system, every escalation protocol, every fallback layer and automation flag. He took notes, nodded like he understood. But I knew he didn't. Not really. Still, I didn't question it. Not out loud. I've been around long enough to know how this works. They plant the seed, let it grow behind closed doors. When it's big enough, they rip you out. I leaned back in the chair, letting my hand rest on the conference table, my table. Same table where I pitched the Asia-Pac expansion model, where we solved the server crash of 2018, where the CTO once toasted me for saving $1 billion client account from walking out the door. Now, it was just me and a trembling intern who wanted to vanish into her clipboard. "Does it say what happens next?" I asked gently. She blinked, nodded, flipped a page. Yes. You'll receive a formal separation package by email this afternoon. There's an option to schedule an exit interview, and you're free to collect your things before end of day." I nodded. "That all?" She hesitated. "There's a letter from the CEO as well. He wanted to express his gratitude." I reached across the table, took it from her hand, folded. No envelope. I didn't open it. Instead, I stood, smoothed the front of my shirt, and offered my hand. She looked surprised, but took it. "I understand," I said politely. Calm, steady, like someone who had just been asked to pass the salt. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked past her, out of the room, past the glass walls where a few heads turned and then quickly turned back, past the hallway where I had stood, giving impromptu tech briefings for over a decade, past the desk of the man who was about to replace me, Bradley, who wasn't even in yet, late again, 12 years. And it ends with a printed script and a forced smile. But nobody realized that I was still watching, still tracking, still 5 moves ahead. He walked in wearing a suit that probably cost more than his first paycheck. Tailored navy wool, designer tie still stiff from the packaging, shoes too shiny to have ever touched a real server room floor. I watched him from behind the glass, leaning against the corner of my old office, my office. He didn't even sit down at first, just stood there, hands in his pockets, soaking in the space like he'd just conquered something. The plaque on the desk still had my name on it. I waited to see if he'd notice. He didn't. His name is Bradley Mercer, fresh out of a second-tier MBA program with a surname that opens more doors than any resume ever could. The CEO's sister's son. Technically not blood, but close enough for Bradley to act like he owned the building. 6 months ago, he was introduced to me as a rising star, someone the board wanted exposed to high-level operations. No job title, no responsibilities, just a badge, a notebook, and the right last name. He shadowed me for weeks, sat beside me during system reviews, project briefings, executive calls. He asked questions, some good, most shallow, nodded a lot. Took notes on his phone even when I told him not to. I walked him through everything anyway, because that's what you do when someone's on track for leadership. You play the long game, you protect your standing, you don't make waves. But deep down, I knew. The way he lingered after meetings, the way people started including him in strategy emails he had no business reading, the way the CEO called him B like they were at a family barbecue, it all added up. They weren't grooming him for something. They were grooming him for mine. I didn't take a vacation, didn't go find myself. I just watched. From a distance at first, a few pings from the outside, some vendor chatter, back-end reports still routing to my archive folder. Then closer. I walked in on a Tuesday like I still worked there, because technically no one had turned off my badge. Old habits die hard, but negligence dies harder. I wasn't there to reclaim anything. I was there to witness it. How quickly the seams started splitting. How fast silence turned into rot. Benji, my old wingman, pretended not to see me in the break room. Didn't matter. I wasn't there for friendship. I was there to document the collapse. I started bringing a notebook. Not to make a point. Just habit. Old reflex. While Bradley fumbled through onboarding the India cloud migration team, I took notes. When he skipped over SLA language in the vendor proposal, language I personally negotiated last quarter, I took notes. I didn't glare. I didn't correct him. I just watched. He tried to bluff his way through his first department stand-up, said words like synergy and agility without understanding either. Asked the integration team to fast-track a system they'd already flagged for a critical patch. They nodded politely, waited for him to leave, then pinged me. "Hey, is this serious?" One message read. "We're not really moving to Jenkins for deployment, are we?" I didn't reply, not yet. I kept coming back. Not every day, but often enough to stay current. I wasn't lurking. I wasn't sabotaging. I was studying, mapping the cracks before the floor gave out. On a Wednesday, I passed by my old office and saw he'd finally taken the nameplate down. A new one sat in its place. Bradley Mercer, VP, Global Systems. Not acting, not interim, just VP. That same afternoon, he found me in the break room. I was grabbing a coffee. Old habits die hard. "Hey," he said, smiling like we were old friends. "Glad you're around? I've been meaning to ask if I could, pick your brain sometime." I stirred the coffee slowly. No sugar, just a splash of cream. Same way I've always taken it. "Sure," I said, happy to help. And I smiled, because that was the first real crack in the foundation. "Of course," I told him, happy to help. And then I started planting seeds. I didn't go home that night, not really. I left the building, drove around the block, then parked in the underground garage and walked back in through the freight entrance like I used to when things went sideways in the middle of a product launch. Badge still worked. No one questioned me. Half the security team still thought I was on a global consulting retainer, which, technically, wasn't wrong. That night I started backing up everything, quietly, carefully, not to sabotage, not to leak, just insurance. Clean versions of every SOP I ever wrote. Notes from dev handoffs, change logs, architecture diagrams. The real versions, not the polished PDF shells Bradley had skimmed during onboarding. I encrypted the archive, sent it to a private server in Iceland I'd been using since 2017, just in case. Back in the office, Bradley was busy making himself visible, constant hallway strutting, standing at the edge of meetings he didn't belong in. He loved buzzwords, especially ones he didn't understand. "Let's pivot to a microservice-oriented architecture," he said in his first division-wide email, which read like a TED Talk transcript written by ChatGPT on Adderall. So I gave him what he wanted. I invited him to a transition sync, just the two of us. Said I'd walk him through some of the more legacy systems that hadn't made it into his glossy welcome packet. I could see the gleam in his eyes when he walked in. He thought I was finally recognizing him as a peer. I sat him down and pulled up the deployment dashboard. "This here's the Jenkins container pipeline," I said casually. "We shifted back to it after Concourse gave us dependency hell." He nodded like he understood. "It's mostly automated now," I added. "You won't have to touch it much, but just make sure the fallback trigger is armed before any weekend pushes. Otherwise, it'll default to the canary node. And we've had issues." He nodded again. Didn't ask what the fallback trigger was. Didn't write anything down. Perfect. Next day, I dropped an SOP folder onto his shared drive. 3 files, a stripped-down process doc, an outdated flowchart from 2 quarters ago, a temporary fix email chain with redacted timestamps. He never questioned it. A week later, he asked about vendor approval workflows. I told him I'd loop him into the right threads, then forwarded him a conversation that was missing the most recent exchange, the one where finance flagged the new contract structure as non-compliant. He greenlit it anyway. Every move I made was subtle, surgical. I never sabotaged anything. I just withheld context. Let him trip over his own confidence. Let him think he was ready. He wasn't. He copied my meeting cadence, but never adjusted the time zones, so half the offshore team started joining late, or not at all. I let it ride. I walked past his office one morning and overheard him confidently explaining a dev cycle compression plan I'd abandoned 2 years ago. He even called it the Mercer model. I bit the inside of my cheek and kept walking. Then came the outage. It started with a vendor sync glitch, minor, but it escalated when the Jenkins fallback didn't trigger. Canary Node tried to deploy a hotfix that was never validated, and the system flagged a recursive loop that locked the dashboard entirely. By the time anyone caught it, the entire deployment line was down in all 3 regions. 47 clients affected. 2 critical. Bradley was in a one-on-one with the CFO when it hit. I know because he texted me. "Hey, do you have access to the Jenkins kill switch? Something's off." I ignored it. Then came a Slack message from the head of integration. "System's spiraling. He's frozen. Where's the trigger doc?" I waited 10 more minutes before responding. Should be in his onboarding folder. It wasn't. That evening, I went home early. Opened a bottle of Glenfiddich I'd been saving since my 35th birthday. Poured a glass. Put my phone face down and let the silence breathe. Next morning, I walked in at 8 a.m. Sharp. The air was tight, quiet. No greetings. Just that familiar corporate stiffness that hangs in the air when people know a body just hit the floor, but they're not sure who's next. Bradley wasn't in yet. At 8:32, I got a message from Marla, the CEO's assistant. "Hey Michael, Brad's asked if you're available for a quick chat. CEO might join. Conference room B." I took a sip of coffee, smiled, typed back one word. "Sure." The chat turned into a spiral. It started simple. A whiteboard session meant to be collaborative. Bradley pacing around with a dry erase marker like he was about to solve a quantum equation. He kept saying things like synergize and optimize cross-platform alignment, which meant nothing to the 3 team leads in the room who just wanted to know why their deployment windows had been shortened without notice. By the second day after the outage, 2 of our biggest vendors had missed updates, not because of malice, just confusion. The communication tree had shifted. Threads that used to come through me now went unanswered, or worse, got vague responses that sounded like filler. One vendor even CC'd me on a chain and added, "Not sure who to talk to anymore. Mike, can you advise?" I didn't reply. The internal thread count doubled in 2 days. What's the new rollback policy? Did the Jenkins patch get approved? Who owns the staging flags now? Each question sat longer than the last. Nobody wanted to ping Bradley directly, not after the disaster in conference room B. I hadn't even needed to say much during that meeting. He walked in trying to control the narrative. "It was a rare stack collision," he said. A legacy configuration problem. The CEO just stared at him, then turned to me. Was that a legacy problem? I shook my head once. It was flagged, twice, March and again in May. Bradley blinked, said nothing, didn't even look at me, just scribbled something useless on the notepad in front of him. After that, I went quiet. I told them I was taking some time off, said I needed to clear my head and reset. Booked a cabin near Tahoe. Didn't go. I stayed in town. Let them believe I was off the grid. From my apartment, I watched it all crumble. Clients began escalating. One sent a heated email to the regional director. This is the second time we've lost access to your portal during peak hours. Our patients can't wait on your incompetence. I knew the client. I was the one who brought them in. Flew to Phoenix twice to close that deal. Sat through their legal team's 50-slide compliance deck. It was a 6-figure account. Now it was hanging by a thread. Internal systems started lagging. Payroll flagged data mismatches. The operations team missed a hardware refresh cycle because someone deleted the quarterly task schedule while cleaning up clutter. 3 procurement orders were sent to the wrong vendor because Bradley confused the alias emails. Benji, the one who canceled our lunch, texted me late one night. "This is a mess. You still watching?" I didn't answer, just left it on red. By week 2, IT had filed 3 internal alerts. Not threats, just red flags. Access logs were incomplete. A new DevOps hire hadn't been properly credentialed. 2 engineers had admin rights they shouldn't have. And nobody could confirm if the data scrub tool had been updated before the latest audit pull. Which meant we were vulnerable. Legally. Trust started eroding. Quietly at first. I could feel it in the silence. The way messages stayed in draft. The way leaders started slipping, as previously documented, into every sentence like legal cover. A few even reached out to me privately. "Do you remember where we stored the original failover keys? Do you have access to the 2022 vendor rollout tracker? Do you think we should loop you in?" I kept telling them the same thing. "Sorry, I'm unplugged right now." I let it marinate, let the disorientation fester. Bradley started making rounds again, less confident now, less strut, more slide. He'd show up to team huddles uninvited, throw out ideas like duct tape, and leave before people asked questions. I heard from one analyst that he'd tried to implement a new protocol system based on an article he read about Spotify's team structure. Problem was, we didn't use micropods. We didn't have the architecture or the staffing to mimic it. He didn't care. He wanted the buzzwords. Then came the phone call. Marla again. Same soft tone as last time. "Hey Mike, hope Tahoe's treating you well." I smiled. Didn't bother correcting her. "The CEO's wondering if you'd be open to a short consult. Nothing formal, just a quick favor. Just some guidance on the vendor escalations. Totally optional, of course." I paused just long enough to make it noticeable. "Sure," I said. "Just this once." I walked back into the building I'd built, just to show them what they'd lost. Not literally, of course. The building had been there long before me, but the engine inside it, the heartbeat, the flow, the systems that pulse through every server and dashboard and product line, they were mine. I'd designed them. I'd grown them. I'd made them hum. Now they were choking, stalling, and everyone inside that boardroom knew it. I wore a charcoal suit, tailored, crisp, no tie, just a black button-up and presence. The receptionist looked up when I walked in, did a double take, then stood like she wasn't sure whether to say good morning or call security. I gave her a polite nod and kept walking. It was a strange thing, feeling like both a ghost and a guest in the same place. Conference room C had already been prepped. Long table, 12 seats, 3 screens on the wall. Marla was there with her tablet, and Bradley was sitting at the end, scrolling furiously through something on his phone. He didn't look up. His suit was rumpled, no jacket, tie slightly askew like he'd pulled it loose on the elevator ride up. His confidence was fraying at the edges. The CEO arrived last, walked in with that stiff posture executives wear when they're trying to project calm but are already doing damage control in their head. He greeted me with a firm handshake, said my name like it tasted strange in his mouth. I smiled. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Of course," I replied. "Just here to help." They handed me the clicker. That was their first mistake. I stepped to the front of the room and brought up the system diagnostic dashboard, not the live version they'd been monitoring. No, this was my personal trace log. synced to archived flags from the last 6 months. It was clean, color-coded, fully time-stamped. No one had seen this version before, not even Bradley. "Let's start with Jenkins," I said. "Fallback trigger, disabled for 5 of the last 8 deployments." Click. Vendor scheduling, misaligned across the EU region. 3 missed handoffs. 1 client escalated 4 times before getting a callback. Click. Staging credentials, admin access granted to 2 junior hires without 2-factor authentication. That one's a lawsuit waiting to happen. No one spoke, just the sound of pages flipping, pens scratching. Bradley shifted in his chair. I walked them through it calmly. No gloating, no smug tone, just data. Facts. Things I had warned them about. Quietly, in the margins, while everyone else was chasing buzzwords. Every single failure had a trigger, and every trigger came from a decision Bradley made. Not because he was malicious, not even because he was lazy, because he didn't understand what he was doing, because they trusted someone who didn't know what the hell he was looking at. The room stayed quiet as I moved through the final slide. It wasn't flashy, just a simple flowchart. Old system versus current system, before and after. Before, seamless, aligned, redundant. After, fragile, fractured, on fire. I turned back to the room and set the clicker down. "I didn't come here to ask for anything," I said. "You don't owe me a title, a desk, or a second chance. I came here because I built something that mattered, and I wasn't going to watch it get buried without telling you how it happened." Bradley opened his mouth, closed it, then finally muttered, "You could have warned me." I met his eyes, level. "I did. 6 months ago. Every day." He looked away. The CEO cleared his throat. "And what would you suggest? Moving forward?" I pulled a folder from my bag, standard manila, no logo. I opened it, removed a single sheet of paper, and slid it across the table. The CEO leaned forward, reading silently, then slowly passed it to Marla. It wasn't mine. It was Bradley's resignation letter, signed, dated, typed the night before. There was a moment, just a flicker, where his face drained. "You forged?" "No," I said evenly. "You left it on the shared drive. It's real, just never sent." He lunged forward to grab it, but the CEO held it steady, eyes still scanning the words. Nobody spoke. Finally, the CEO looked up at me, and for the first time in 12 years, he really saw me. Like he wasn't just looking at the guy who kept the wheels turning quietly in the background, but the one who built the road in the first place. "You want your job back?" he asked. I smiled, slow and measured. "No," I said. "I want something better." I didn't ask for my job back. I didn't want it. When the CEO offered, quietly, carefully, as if the words might cut something fragile in the air, I just looked at him for a moment, not out of hesitation. I wasn't unsure. I wanted him to sit with it, to really look at me and understand that I wasn't the same man he dismissed, with a borrowed HR intern and a script. "I appreciate the offer," I said calmly, "but I've already moved on." He blinked, clearly not expecting that. The boardroom was still tense from what I'd just shown them. 6 months of slow degradation spelled out in clean metrics and sharp failure points. The silence hung for a beat too long. No one else spoke. "I've started a consulting firm," I added, sliding a simple card across the table. White mat, black text, no logo, just my name and a direct line. "Advisory and systems integrity, no bureaucracy, no nonsense." He took the card, turned it over once, then looked up. "And you already have clients?" "2 vendors," I said. "One of them's your biggest infrastructure partner. The other pulled their contract 2 weeks ago. Both came to me directly." I didn't say their names. I didn't need to. He leaned back in his chair. I could see the gears turning behind his eyes. What it meant to lose not just a director, but a foundation. What it meant to watch the guy they replaced walk away more valuable than ever. A few board members murmured quietly, as if recalibrating their opinions in real time. I stood slowly, gathered the single folder I'd brought with me, and tucked it back into my bag. No grand farewell, no victory speech, just clean lines and a closed loop. "Thank you for your time," I said. The CEO nodded. "Michael, whatever else happened, you built something incredible here." I gave a small smile. "Yes, I did." And then I walked out. No one stopped me. No one tried to chase or negotiate. They just watched. And in their silence, I heard everything I needed to hear. The hallway was quiet as I passed through it. Fewer people now, lighter footsteps. That old buzz of momentum had thinned into hesitation and second guesses. A junior dev caught my eye, one I'd mentored early on. He gave a small nod, barely noticeable. I returned it. In the elevator, I checked my phone. 7 unread messages, one from a former product manager. "Let me know when you're hiring. I'm done here." Another from a senior analyst. "Can I buy you lunch next week? I've got ideas." One from Benji. "Still kicking myself. Don't want to make the same mistake twice." They were coming, not all at once, not in a mutiny, but one by one, quietly, they were choosing something else, something cleaner, sharper, and I wasn't going to stop them. When I stepped out into the lobby, I spotted her. The intern, same one who delivered the script. Her posture was different now, shoulders hunched a little, like she'd realized what she'd been used for, even if no one told her outright. She looked up when I passed. I stopped. "Hey," I said. She straightened. "Hi, Mr. Crane." "No need for that," I replied. "Just Michael." She smiled awkwardly. "I didn't know what I was part of back then." I nodded once. "You weren't supposed to." She looked like she wanted to say more, but I didn't press. I just held her gaze for a moment, then offered a small, sincere smile. "Take notes," I said. "Lots of them. And trust your gut more than your title." Then I turned and walked toward the glass doors. The sunlight hit hard outside, clean and sharp against the concrete. I didn't squint. I welcomed it. The air felt better out here. My phone buzzed again. This time, a name I didn't recognize. Someone who got my number from someone else who still knew what mattered. And in the back of my mind, I thought of that phrase, the one they'd used when they let me go, that corporate throwaway line dressed up like a strategy. "Fresh energy," I smiled. "Good luck with that."